The main objective of this lecture is to make the students of Bachelor Performing Arts Music degree course first year regarding ancient Indian sculpture. Though the earliest examples of sculptures found in India take us back nearly 5,000 years to the period of the recalled Indus Valley civilization, it is not until the 2nd century BC, when the great Buddhist stupa was built at Bharut, that we are provided with the material on which to base any clear and stable conception of the history and development of Indian sculpture as a tradition. Indian ancient sculpture can be seen and studied in the following order: Indus Valley civilization, Mauryans, Shungas, Kushanas, Shakas and Andhras, Guptas. The most interesting fact about the discoveries of the Indus Valley civilization and further is that we are confronted with evidence of culture already long established with no clues to the earlier stages of development. It is believed that the city-states of the Indus Valley reached the zenith of their industrial and commercial development during 3rd millennium BC. This date is according to Mesopotamian chronology. Certain Indus seals have been discovered at Mesopotamia sites. It was contemporary with the later part of the early dynastic period of Babylonia. These three civilizations were based on the same primary technological inventions, but have no parallel in contemporary Sumer or Egypt. Among the many small fragments of sculpture so far discovered in the Indus Valley civilization, the most interesting are two mutilated torsos found at Harappa. The first statue, carved in red sandstone, represents the naked torso of a man posed frontally, with shoulders well back and abdomen slightly prominent. Exact anatomical detail, naturalistic in style, correct sense of volume, the surface undulations, the supple flesh are the unique characteristics. The head and arms were cut separately and socketed into the torso. Breast nipples were made separately. The second torso is carved in grey slate, represents the figure of a male dancer in action. The figure stood on its right leg and the left leg being raised high at a transfer angle in front, and the body went well around to counterbalance the swing. Genital organs as well as the arms and head were made separately for attachment, and Sir John Marshall describes the possible epiphalic significance. Two other Indus statues from Mohenjo-daro are different in style and treatment. The first, a fragment in steatite, 7 inches in height, represents the head and shoulders of a man, the face bearded and mustaches, the body draped with a trefoil patterned shawl. It has its affinity with contemporary Sumerian art. The second piece, a bronze casting 4 inches, is the figure of a dancing girl with legs and arms disproportionately long and the wide variety of terracotta figurines, both animals and human and mother goddesses. The technique of pinching out the facial features in soft clay and the application of small pellets of clay for eyes and breasts are still in practice. The engravings on the so-called seals that have been found in large numbers at the Indus sites. The majority of the seals are engraved on one side only and have a small perforated boss at the back, suggesting that they might have been worn around the neck. The subject of the engraving is usually animals like unicorn, the short-horned bull, elephants, rhinoceros, tigers, buffaloes, antelopes. And these animals are naturalistic and the seals were not wheel cut. They were first cut into tablet shape with a saw and then engraved with a burin. The history and development of any sculpture is a tradition, does not become clear until the 2nd century BC. The one big gap in the continuity of India's material culture occurs between the proto-historic art of the Indus and the historic sculptures of the Mauryans. About the 4th century BC, we come across monuments of stone in the form of colossal yaksha images, of which the one from the village of Parkham. It is round in form, but main expression is frontal. Its dominating size is symbolic of the elemental power of the divinity as conceived in that early age. About 2 dozens of figures have been discovered in Mathura, Bharatpur, Pavaya, Rajgarh, Kaushambi, Patna, Videshas, Shishupalgarh in Odisha. The tradition of folk art was supplemented in the Mauryan period by a court art of great vitality and technical competence. Another distinguished feature of the Mauryan sculptures is the bright polish imparted to stone surface. Monolithic stone pillars 40 to 50 feet high, adorned with animal capitals of striking craftsmen. They stand on the ground without any base. The round shafts are plain, devoid of all decoration. They are distinguished by their capitals, another piece fixed on the top of the shaft. The pillar at Lauri Nandangarh is remarkable for its tall shaft. The bull capital of Rampurba pillar constitutes the high watermark of animal sculpture, the young bull being the embodiment of concentrated energy balance. The quadriptite line capitals of Sarnath and Sanchi mark the last phase in the evolution. At Sarnath, we find for the first time 4 lines grouped together instead of a single figure. On the round abacus above, at high relief carvings of lion, a galloping horse, an elephant, and a bull, separated from each other by a veil. The Buddhists believe them to be the guardians of 4 cardinal points. They symbolize the continuous movement and unceasing progress of Dharma Chakra. The freshness and naturalism of the animal figures contrast strongly with the 4 conventionalized lines above. Sitting back to back on top of the abacus, the lines echo the essential shapes of the lotus, though the rippling curls of the mane, the upturned whiskers, and the shape of the lips are conventionalized. The snarling mouths and bared teeth look very real. The lion heads with incised parallel lines representing the muzzle and the eyes is a triangular shape resemble Persian lion figures. The symbolism of Indian art attained its highest expression, which is as much Buddhistic as Vedic in the significance of several parts. Its bulk movement and lifelike finish make it a superb example of Ashoka's plastic art. Here, Indian artist exhibits the feelings of asceticism, but on the contrary, reflecting a mood of bubbling happiness. It strikes an essential indigenous note quite different from the art traditions of the capitals. The unconventional Dhauli elephant, as well as the Rampurva bull and Sankisa elephant, seem to belong to Indus Valley. The exact cause of the rapid decline of the Mauryan dynasty is not known. With the Shungas, on the throne. The people could not return to their old customs and honor their village and natural deities, whom they represented with much skill and care, as seen in the monuments at Bharut and Bodh Gaya. The Shungas, although Brahminical by faith, did not persecute the Buddhists, with the result that many Buddhist monuments were erected during this period. Acquaint influence disappeared. The scriptures of the Shunga period show the evolution from an archaic phase to one of maturity. The dense overcrowding with the human figures contrasts almost completely with the Mauryan art, where relatively few examples of human figures exist. The sculptures of the Shunga period show the evolution from an archaic phase to one of the maturity. The sculpture remains this period consists of those stone Vedikas and Tornas of Sanchi's tomb, second Bharut and Bodh Gaya, Kushana, Gandhara and Amravati. Mathura, a great center of sculpture during the first 3 centuries of the Christian era, lies 50 miles away from Delhi. It owes its importance and prosperity to its situation at the junction of great route linking the commercial centers of Gandhara province in the northwest with Patliputra in the east and the busy seaport of Bharika Chakka on the west coast. It was a great religious cultural center too, in which merchant class was dominating. The chronology of this period is a matter of dispute. The growth of Kushan political power in India coincided with the first great schism within the Buddhist movement that resulted in the establishment of the rival Mahayana and Hinayana schools. The popular demand was the use of the image in worship. In sculpture, these changes were reflected by 2 innovations. The most common of them was the creation of an iconography necessitated by the portrayal of the various Buddhas and of the Tirthankaras of Jaina sect. The Bodhisattvas standardization of the Buddhist image involved special difficulties, including that of representing Ushnisha, the distinguishing mark with which every future Buddha or Bodhisattva was said to be born. The mudras too had been adopted. In most of the carvings, particularly those associated with the stupa technique and visions, are fundamentally Indian and directly related to the earlier stupa traditions. The Yakshi figures portrayed on the railing pillars at Mathura are more voluptuous. All the Yakshinis have large breasts, narrow waists and a wide hips, emphasizing their relation with the fertility spirits. The art of Mathura carried on the earlier tradition of Bharut and Sanchi. All statues are carved in red sandstone. Another important contribution of Mathura was the introduction of portraits. New qualities emerge in the designs of the deep cut ornamental reliefs, and we find traces of Western influence. Gandhara art, the term Gandhara art brings to mind a mixture of Hellenistic and Buddhist forms. Thus, the art development from the 4th century BC under the patronage the Kushana rulers and continued till the 5th century AD, when much of the Gandhara was invaded by the Huns. Swat, Bajapur and Peshawar valleys came under foreign influence, the earliest being the Achaemenid Empire of Persia and occupied by Alexander's army. A century later, the Shakas, Parthians, came into power. Gandhara was one of the provinces of Ashoka converted to Buddhism, and it had many Buddhist settlements. Gandhara art was not homogeneous because of the local differences in scale. Reliefs with drinking scenes have been found adapted to Buddhist monuments. The Hellenistic character in art soon became more Indianized as the artists tried to reconcile and local ideas and to create an art suitable to Buddhist creed. The image of Buddha, Bodhisattva from Mathura was based on indigenous plastic and iconographic ideals, but Gandhara Buddha was based on extraneous standard, but follows Indian traditions in every detail of its iconography. Although bearing all the iconographic marks and traits of the Indian tradition, the Gandhara Buddha is rendered in terms of divine figure of the Greco-Roman pantheon. He is robed in thick garment like Roman toga, covering both the shoulders with hair in wavy curls with expression unknown to Indian norms with mustaches and turbans, and turned the Buddha into Apollo. The earliest specimen of art seems to be the Bimra reliquary. It is a round golden box with a repusi in late rupees. It belongs to the first Saka rulers. It is not impossible to recognize Roman colonial art mixed with many influences. In the fabric of Indian art, Gandhara school was just a passing phase. Karli and Kanheri in West India has been described as the aboriginal trend in rock carvings. The heavy plastic form, broad and expensive in content and awareness of the disciplined rhythm, seems to be inspired by the classical concept. In South India, the school of Vengi appeared in the 2nd century BC. Amravati marks the center of his southern movement. The remains of Nagrachan Konda also played significant part in Indian art. The characteristic are slenderness of form, shallowness of relief, deep cuts, sturdier built figures, sure and decisive outlines extra. It is marking the end of the old school. Gupta art. With the rise of the imperial Gupta dynasty, Indian sculpture enters a new phase in its development. Special stress was laid on the role of Buddhism and its transformation from the stage of a sectarian monastic order with austere ideals to that of a popular religion, incorporating the characteristic features of primitive cults of the soil. The new religion strands already present in Mathura between the 4th and the 3rd century AD were further developed in the Gupta period under pressure of changing economic conditions brought about in the first place by a decline in foreign trade. There are two distinct yet coexisting styles. On the one hand, the style associated with the cult images, and on the other, the ornamental carving in low relief. The main centers were Mathura and Sarnath, but Gupta's influence spread further. These sculptures include standing and seated figures, Buddhists, Hindus, and Jainas. Gupta Buddha are advanced in comparison with the early Mathura. The Gupta style Buddhas are entirely clad in sangetis, while previous Mathura statues had ridges indicating the folds of the sanghiti. The Guptas have a series of strengths instead. The former stiff conventionalism of the drapery has become a rhythmic pattern. The representation of the human body is fully Indian, having a feeling for plastic volume and mass. They acquired great mastery of technique and refinement The treatment of the Buddha figures in particular reveals a new awareness of the supremacy of man's spiritual powers over moral values. Whereas the solidity of the earlier images gave the impression of purely physical strength, the Gupta figures with delicate modeling, finer proportions and emphasis on facial expression of serenity show that the material body is dominated from within by the powers of this soil. The later kings of this dynasty, referred to as Greater Gangas, came under influence of Cholas, who invaded the Kalinga territory under Rajaraja Chola. With the coming of Anantavarman, the Ganga asserted their independence by 1090. He is known as the founder of Jagannath temple at Puri and another ruler, Narasimha I, responsible for the Sun temple at Konark. These temples are embellished with numerous sculptures. The faces of the figures are round and full with short and broad poses. The brows are like bow above smallish eyes. They wear short drapery, both plain patterned ends for above the knees. They are adorned with heavy jewelry and here are the Mila style and forms a large and round coil at the back. The Guchra and Pratihara's artistic activity came standstill after the fall of Guptas until the 7th century when Harshvardhan of Thanisar restored the regime. From the 8th century to the 10th century, the Gurjaram and Pratiharas predominated in India. The main features of sculptures of this period are as follows. The long, thin, highly arched eyebrows converging at the bridge of the nose and the transition from the forehead to the eye is not as sharp as in Gupta's, and the elongated eyes usually remained half closed and the sharp nose broad at the base. The lower lip is slightly thicker and the chin is fleshy. The face looked broad and full and the neck rather short. All these images which have been made during this time, they were related to any religion, they were full of spirituality.